Hi Krishna, welcome to UNDP. I've heard a lot about you, read some bit about you. So this is a great opportunity to actually get to know you better. And we thought because the World Environment Day is just around the corner, that we get people who are really interested and are working in environment to get to know them better. So even before we get into those bigger climate questions, I'd love to start with you, basically. Who is Krishna? What influences what Krishna does? That deep sort of a relationship that you talk about of being tied to culture, to spirituality, to community. So how did you make this connection, or where does this connection come from?
Well, that is a deep question indeed. Who is Krishna? Who am I? Or am I still discovering myself as I grow and as I walk this path of life, also of love? But what I know a bit on Krishna is that he's very passionate in everything that he does, and he carries a philosophy of almost childishness, which we call play. It's a philosophy where we accept life the way it comes, but we also play with it in a way that any obstacles that comes, any difficulty that arises, we accept those difficulties, but we also play with it. And I was deeply in love with everything that had to do with the sciences and the arts when I was a kid. I remember I loved Mother Nature, because I call her Mother Nature a lot. And I had friends, friends, who I gave different names. And I remember when I was a kid, there was a moment where our neighbors were not fond of a tree who was kind of releasing leaves to the surrounding. The neighbor were kind of angry, but the tree was in our space. And then my parents decided to cut down that tree. I remember, to protect the tree, I didn't shout at my parents. I just went and climbed the tree and hugged the tree until the machine went away. Like, it was my, I think, first activism thing that I did back when I was...
How old were you at that
I think 7, 8 years of age. And I love to see life also as something meant to be loved, but also when it comes to activism, at times it can be very critical, extreme, it can be very tough, but I still love to appreciate and to welcome this with this element of play.
Oh, very interesting. And what you just said about going and hugging the tree, while you were talking, it just reminded me very strongly. I don't know whether you've heard of the Chipko movement. You have?
Yes.
And how Mr. H.N. Bahuguna, that's what he did, but when he was saving the forest, he actually motivated the whole community in the village. So they would go and hug the trees just to prevent their felling. So good to know, and I while you were talking, that image really flashed before me, because that was the time even we were getting to kind of see, because normally what we do, we take our environment, and as you called it, Mother Nature, very much for granted, right? Most of us do that. There is very little awareness in terms of why do we call it Mother Nature, right? People don't really unpack it. But you said you love the sciences, etc. And then I think you even went in for engineering.
Yes.
So when did you kind of make that connection, with environment? You going in for your academics in the sciences and doing engineering at that, So how all the mechanics and all of that, how did they actually intersect with now, or even with your environmental activism, which you started almost at the age of 7. So how did that connection come about and become so strong?
Well, engineering in itself, especially mechanical engineering, is a form of biomimicry, where one of the first engineers dating way back, what they did was they observed nature, the mechanisms in nature, how does a bird fly, what is the mechanism behind flying, to later try to construct an aircraft, for example. The engine in itself resembles a lot to our hearts, the way our heart pump blood. So many things that is found in nature but also within us has been mimicked into mechanical engineering to try to develop our society, to try to develop countries. But unfortunately, with especially the Industrial Revolution, this development went kind of off track. It was not sustainable development, and it was engineering which was not along with nature. It was engineering against nature. Even though we were taking inspiration from nature to build, we ended up very much destroying this environment, this nature. And all of this was very even a bit existential question for me on why we're taking inspiration from nature, but ultimately we're ending destroying nature through engineering. Then I also found that there are solutions through engineering. So there are modern ways of developing, for instance, renewable energies. There are modern ways of developing solar panels, which mimics leaves. So when there is sunlight, the leaf will move towards the sun. There are panels which are mimicking this movement to absorb maximum solar energy. And then I started to find some level of solutions in mechanical engineering, especially in the renewable energy sector. And it's also a beautiful mixing of the arts, where many people, actual people in contemporary history, do not speak about how essential creative thinking is to engineering and how essential arts is to engineering. So it was a beautiful mixture of the arts, of the sciences, and of solutions to find for nature. Because my thesis, my bachelor thesis, was on the biomimicry, on how we can observe the flippers of a humpback whale. It has tubercle shapes, and if we can integrate those shapes into a wind turbine, which resembles the flipper of a humpback whale, and try to see whether the wind turbine get an increased aerodynamic efficiency, for example. There are many examples like this, which is very interesting in the mechanical engineering sector.
Very interesting. And what about the art? You mentioned art. So what kind of art were you talking about? How did you bring that into this whole mix of engineering, environment and art? What kind of role? So was it whatever your creations were with engineering, were they artistic or inspired by art? How did that go?
Well, to begin with, I think the arts have the power to transcend many human boundaries, whether they are scientific boundaries, whether they are maybe a kind of logistical boundaries, things that humans cannot communicate scientifically or policy-wise. Art can communicate that in a way, but also we can take inspiration, for example, the merging of engineering and arts, on how different structures are very minimal structures, microscopic structures, to the macroscopic structures, how we have to have this sensitivity to be able to detect those structures, but also to be able to detect those methodologies happening around us. So this sensitivity is also critical if we want to develop, like we say, sustainably. And I used to paint a lot when I was small. And I also used to draw a lot. So engineering in itself, engineering design starts with a drawing at the very base of it. And if there is maximum creative energy, then there can be a form of innovation. but also art has the power to speak the language of the heart. Um, Even in conferences that I attend, in forum that I attend, in many drafting committees for policy proposals, we are trying to bring the empirical data, science-based research or science-based policy making, but in a way to communicate those things, maybe not just high level, but also to the community. Art, I can see it's a very powerful tool to connect with the community, not just arts, but also culture, because it is what makes a community alive. I remember reading that the intelligence of society is based on how they preserve their culture. Like collective intelligence can be found in culture. And we were talking about there are different kinds of cultures, oral, transmitted cultures, which are very interesting. When I was speaking of Mother Nature, it's not just to quote Mother Nature, but it is found deeply in many philosophies, African philosophies, Indian philosophies, which are mostly pre-colonial philosophies, because those philosophies were fully ecocentric, because nature was not something to extract from. Nature was within us and without us. We were part of nature, and we were nature in itself. And so there was this disconnection. Many research have just proven that almost 60% disconnection happened compared to the past between human and nature. And I find that very sad. But one solution to it, I think, can work is culture, ancient knowledge systems, philosophies which were fully ecocentric.
So, I mean, you mentioned earlier you are very passionate about it. So I can clearly see that passion coming out. But then you went, did engineering and all of that, and you started to do that. But can you, when you look back, what was that moment when you thought you were going to pursue this as a full-blown mission, if I can call it like that? So now it's your mission in life, right, in terms of preserving environment, pursuing environmental sustainability. Can you recall the exact moment when that happened?
I remember when I was a kid, I was very sensitive. Even a cockroach, I wouldn't allow my parents to kill because it's still a living being. God. So I just
I love the environment, but not everything. Certainly not cockroaches.
Yeah, you're kind of right, because from a conservationist perspective, there are exotic species that have to be get rid of to preserve the endemic species. But to begin with, I love nature more than something external. I saw her as something very internal and someone very deeply connected. Without knowing what meditation was, I love to go and meditate to the forest, because I live in a small village called Ekwanyo, and there are many trees, some forests, and the mountains. So since very small, I thought it was, since I was ingrained in it, since I was born from there, I thought it was something very normal to love nature like this, to respect nature, to have this connection. But when I grew up, I started to see different philosophies, different school of thoughts, different ways of developing, different people describing nature. And then I saw this disconnection, and it was a culture shock for me, because I'm not used to this this way of life. And then I said to myself, this is the time to maybe start speaking out from the humble origins that I come from, to bring this richness.
So when you were a child?
Yes.
How old were you at that time? At the age of 7,
no, I think
you hugged a tree?
10, 11, around that.
Okay.
Yes, I still have, I remember I have this, the diary where I wrote my 10 dreams or plans. Amongst it was to become and scientists to help nature, something like that.
Okay.
And I remember writing an essay on it in English class. And I think those are the things that started it all, because when I try to remember it, I have to go back, and it did not start very from Sov Lanatir, it started very deep within. Now when I go to various international bodies, UN bodies, there still is this disconnection that I see, especially maybe in big cities. So I try to bring this, my perspective from the humble origin that I come from. And I owe a lot to my parents. My father used to work a lot in the sugarcane fields when he was young. I remember him narrating those stories when I was smaller than 10 years. I remember him telling me that one day he was so tired, he just ended up climbing a mango tree and slept on the tree.
He slept on the tree?
Yes.
Without falling off?
Without falling off, yes.
Wow.
And maybe that's how I got the climbing technique from, maybe, from him. And then when I grew up, it was something very common when I studied history, when I studied especially pre-colonial history. It was something very, very natural, very normal to have those kind of relationship with nature. Africa calls it la terre rouge, the red land. And Africa, I know there is a quote which is very interesting, that when an old person dies, it's like a library has been burnt off. And there is this beautiful transmission between nature and human that existed way back. It's not something new, it's just something that already existed, maybe just going a bit back to those roots. But it really started when I confronted this different way of seeing nature in people. I think that's where it got triggered.
Oh, very interesting. And now how do you see it, where we are at the moment? You know, the present time.
Yes.
With regard to the climate, with regard to the environment. You go for all of these conferences, you hear a lot about what's happening. So what feels most urgent to you?
Well, now
in this area?
Maybe I leave a bit the dreamy part, but come back to the engineer. Maybe one of the most pressing issue is the energy issue. Not just for Mauritius, but for mostly island nations, because where effectively Mauritius is dependent, around 90% dependent on importation of fossil fuels. And those regions, unfortunately, most of the region is currently geopolitically very volatile in terms of decisions, in terms of what's happening in the region, especially with regards to different conflicts, wars. So it makes island states even more vulnerable. We're already very vulnerable to geopolitical changes, but now it makes it even more vulnerable. In 2025, I remember there was a peak of electricity, which never happened before. This resulted in a momentaneous blackout in Mauritius. It shows that our capacity has been already overloaded. Unfortunately, we do not really have enough renewable energy to compensate to this upsurge of demand of energy. So one of the pressing issues is to develop urgently into renewable energy, not just to reduce our GHG emission, to mitigate climate change, but to claim our energy sovereignty. Mauritius has become an independent country from 1968, but how truly independent are we? Based on food security, based on energy sovereignty, based on the way we live, how autonomous are we? And it also goes to various island nations. I recently published an abstract on how it is important to claim this energy sovereignty because, as we call it, the global north is very advanced on it. And it is essential for island nations to develop the expertise, the technicalities needed, not just for our own application, local application, but also to have a say, a proper, well-informed say in the energy diplomacy that's happening. And it's a field that is commonly now arising, and we call it science diplomacy. So I believe it is essential for island nations also to partake in those discussions as equals, not just as passive followers of the energy transition. So the energy crisis is one of the pressing issues, but there are also...
So are we doing enough about it in Mauritius? Or
think
you think there is, or are we on the right track rather to address this? The energy sovereignty that you speak of?
Yes. We did not do enough, definitely, because we didn't do enough, this has resulted in the current state we are in, because there are many reports from many experts that I've read. There is many projects, long-term projects, that has been devised 10, 20 years back, many roadmaps, but no implementation. It's just now that it's becoming like a visible crisis, like a tangible crisis, that it's becoming a pressing issue, and the high levels are trying to act fast. So definitely we did not do enough, but we still can do, we have to. It's not just we still can do it. It's a pressing issue that we have to start doing it right now, but not just that, we have also to continue and create a vision, not just for the 2030 or 2035 roadmap or 2050 vision, but where will Mauritius be in the 100 years? Where will our true sovereignty be in 100 years? What kind of partnership, how can we help? How can the very strategic geolocalization of Mauritius in the middle of the Indian Ocean, how can this help in this global geopolitics with regards to energy, with regards to food security happen? For me, there still is not that vision. Unfortunately, most of the times, the development resulted in immediate projects or long-term projects, but not visionary projects. If you see many things, infrastructural development that's happening, or even the floodings, I know many friends, urban planners, who devise different results, different urban planning, biophilic designs to prevent floodings. And there are many countries ahead of us, but unfortunately we already have the expertise, but not really the vision to accommodate those expertise for a true sustainable development. But now I come to the hope, because I believe there is hope, because the youth are now becoming more and more aware, but also more and more expertised in different fields needed locally for Mauritius, for the region. We are having, I know many PhD students, PhD candidates working on local problems with local solutions, which is more appropriate with regards to the context and the country at times compared to global north solutions to global south problems. So this brings me a lot of hope that we are starting to develop not only those technicalities, but also those leadership skills needed to push forward those solutions. And that's what Sov Lanatir also is about, the group of youngsters working in various fields to push forward those solutions. But it is also essential to listen the youth, not just as a tokenistic approach, like to tick various boxes, but to really see their own contributions to the country, even they're young.
So what are they saying? What are they saying? Are they optimistic, or they are frustrated? And how do they see themselves? You already mentioned that they are looking for like local solutions to our local problems. So what do they see will be their contribution
Mm.
to this? Because you deal, I mean, you're working with them day in, day out. So what are they saying?
Maybe first of all, I can't generalize, but if I am to maybe give descriptions of different categories of youth, if I can say that,
Okay.
in terms of the spectrum of more pessimistic and optimistic spectrum. The pessimistic spectrum would be more like mainly the brain drain, which is a big problem here in Mauritius and in many islands, where we are having the brain capacities, we are having the very incredible youth power, very incredible thinking, very innovative way of thinking, solutions. But unfortunately, there are not enough platforms or even positions for those youth to contribute. So they have to look elsewhere to follow their dreams and their passions. Then they end up leaving Mauritius, working their brains for big projects. I know very big projects. Some of my friends work for big projects, not for Mauritius, because they offer the platform, but also the position, but also the meritocratic value to those youths. This is mainly maybe on this part of the brain drain. But the more optimistic side, I think, is the youth knowing that we will be the leaders of tomorrow, because the island, even the country, will end up being within our own hands. Because who will lead the country aside from us? The youth, when the elders retire. So there is this, I can say, moral essentiality of the youth to take care of their native country, because we love Mauritius. The youth of Mauritius love Mauritius, even though some of them or many of those bright minds ended up going away. They still love Mauritius.
So why don't they take that leadership? Why are you leaders for tomorrow? I don't know why this thing has. I don't subscribe to that. That leaders are, I mean, youth are leaders of tomorrow. The leadership is here now, where you are.
Yes.
And you don't need an invitation from someone to become a leader. If you started your leadership, as you said, right from age 7.
Yes.
Right? And youth have, if you say, that kind of brain power and the agency, you create your own platforms. And why should you look for, what was the word you used?
Meritocracy.
Meritocracy.
Yes.
Well, you are the meritocracy. You create your own meritocracy. You don't need to depend on anything. So this is also one of the things, I mean, I'm always very curious about. You know, people do look for greener pastures, which is also normal, but it's fine. Let's just say that for Mauritius. So yes, so this is actually now, because as you rightly said, this is a crisis. There's a crisis over here. And where if there are people who are already finding solutions, you know, how do you proceed with that? What is the kind of future you talked about in the future, but what is that future that you see of your beloved country? Where do you think you are going to be, and what do you need to be there? We need more Krishnas.
I think we definitely need more passionate people, but we have them in Mauritius. Maybe we just have to give them the platform so that they can collectively come together. That's what we try to do with Sov Lanatir as well. Like you rightly mentioned, we built our own meritocracy, and this is also what Sov Lanatir is about, because it is an NGO built from scratch. It was from 1 person to 2 people to now more than 5,000 to members and volunteers, and we've engaged around 20,000 youth around Mauritius. But to go back to your question, I see Mauritius to be a fully independent country in terms of energy, food security, this kind of vision to allow like even visionary dreams, like works like people working in let us say architectural fields, people working in the cultural restoration field, people working deeply in improving renewable energy sector. All those kind of different works find their way within Mauritius itself, because Mauritius has this potential to develop all those kind of fields, those deep fields, which can bring a lot of capital to the country. So I view.
And do you foresee Mauritius as a leader? Okay, let's just start as that leader for small island developing states.
Yes.
You know, because there are certain vulnerabilities and certain uniqueness to the small island developing states, which probably bigger nation states will never fully understand and recognize. So can Mauritius become that leader, and who will lead the country to that position basically?
Yes.
I mean, whether it is in terms of putting forward your case at global conversations, you know, these climate conversations happen. How do you put forward that view for a small island developing states, but with a big ocean around you?
Yes.
Right? You have sovereignty over a larger part of the ocean than you have over the actual land mass. So where are you in those conversations, on the global conversations which take place in terms of global warming, and where the oceans are warming and the ice are melting, sea levels are rising. So that is where what you just said, I mean, I'm just trying to pull those pieces of what you said and how you bring all of that together. I mean, you have a outfit, the Sov Lanatir, right? And so perhaps what would be that bigger vision for this outfit of yours? How many members do you have, for instance? Do you have a continuing ambition to enroll more?
Yes. That's a very interesting question, because as a leader we have to think what will happen afterwards, what will happen when, for instance, I no longer fit in the youth category.
How old are you, by the way?
I'll be 28 on 3 days on Friday.
And
yes.
Happy birthday in advance.
Thank you.
You still have some time to go before you exit the youth category.
Yes.
Per the Africa Union. No, Africa Union.
Okay.
Africa Union definition, which goes up to 35.
Yeah,
so.
35.
Yeah.
But I think back to the question on where do we see ourselves. Recently I was in Antigua. It was the conference for island nations, all island nations from the Pacific region, Asia, Indian Ocean region, the Caribbean region, grouped together to talk on it. Unfortunately, it only happens each 10 years.
Oh.
This was something that we put forward and we raised in the international conference. It immediately maybe shows how seriously island nations are being taken care of, maybe taken into consideration, because like you rightly mentioned, we are mostly oceanic states. Approximately 30% of the world's ocean belong to island nations, and that's why a new term is being coined. Instead of small island developing state, island nations are starting to use big ocean states,
yes,
with regards to the vastness of the ocean. But Mauritius definitely has the power to become a worldwide leader. it already has started doing it. For instance, it was one of the first island nations or one of the first countries to ratify the BBNJ
Yes.
agreement back in Antigua. I was actually there for the ratification, and even some of the conventions that Mauritius signed, it has a leadership role already by the way it brings its solutions forward. But it is also a very strategic position in the Indian Ocean where it can have this leadership role. Speaking of how to make our voices be heard or how to lead, Sov Lanatir earlier this year, we organized the first regional dialogue, island nation dialogue in Mauritius, which was collaborated from the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. We started the dialogue mainly for the African Indian Ocean region dialogue in Mauritius. And then there was a dialogue, for instance, in the Pacific. There was a dialogue in the Caribbean, and all those solutions and problems culminated in the global synergy meeting that happened in Japan. And we culminated it into a report, which we will now represent in Japan for the International Ocean Summit. And this is one way to be able to make our voices be heard and to lead the conversation, not just, again, as passive acceptors of diplomatic discussions or solutions, but as co-leaders of those discussions. So one way to lead is already to unify, to come together, to find similar problems, similar solutions, but also different solutions to similar problems, which, for instance, our island might not have come up with. For instance, there is a very great solution that Rodrigues came up with regards to octopus fishing. So there is saison lapis, where there is a period in time where they stop completely.
Yeah, I learned about it recently.
Yes.
My visit to Rodrigues, yeah.
That's fascinating. When we spoke about that in the International Global Synergy meeting with different islands, many of them didn't really realize that this can be a solution that they
Very
can
simple.
implement. Very simple, yes. But very strategic, very well structured. The fishermen are catered for with compensations from the government. So similarly, we also learned on the Pacific region how they fully preserved their culture. How do we decolonize the way we see nature? So this is mostly what was brought up in those discussions, which was very interesting because it was islands-led from an islander's perspective.
So a lot of dialogue, you've mentioned discussions, and you've kind of created this awareness around this. But how do you now transition or turn this
into real
awareness into sustained action, I would say?
Yes.
So do you have any thoughts about that? And you and your peer group who's working on it, or what? And how would you in this endeavor also see, or rather let me be a bit provocative. What is that one change you want to bring about, say for policymakers to be also going and pulling in the same direction that you are, you know, as young leaders going in that, creating that awareness and this dialogue, this practice and your mindset?
Well, first of all, I don't think I am the only way. I think I am one of the different ways to reaching different parts of solutions. And I also believe in continuity. I don't believe in disconnect between elders and youth. Like, we are not fighting against each other.
True.
There has to be this transgenerational transmission and transgenerational dialogue so that the solution can be sustainable and sustained. So the first change that I would propose is to truly listen to the youth up to the level they are, even if we are not equal in terms of age. Even it's not about equalness, it's about how we can bring our bit to this puzzle. So to listen to us is not just, okay, come into a conference, listen to us, write into a report, and then submit the report. No, it's to allow position of powers to those youth to be able to influence decision making.
So very interesting, Krishna. But you have a lot of ideas. You want to really make a lot of changes. But what is your thinking in terms of what kind of, or do you need more partnerships to make this change possible? What kind of partnerships would you think will take you closer or to take you further in your mission? And what do you think about partners like UNDP? What kind of actions can we take or facilitate to help create more spaces? You talked about platforms. So what like young environmental leaders like you need? I know you are already globe-trotting and passing on your message, but what is it that you are looking for from partners?
I think actually the UNDP, for example, is already doing a lot. One example is just recently, I think 2 years back, the UNDP funded one of our members to go for a climate discussion in Kenya. So the UNDP is already facilitating platforms where the youth can allow our voices to be heard, but mostly grassroots movements or grassroots organizations like ours. Maybe one of the missing part is the high-level collaboration or high-level stakeholder collaboration, because we collaborate mostly with the community, grassroots level, with, for instance, the fishermen, the youth, and that's how we started actually. Now we've begin to balance between the bottom-up approach and the top-down approach, and partnership is very essential to allow those spaces to live and breathe, to allow continuity. Partnership in terms of giving platforms for the youth voices to be heard, to facilitate, for example, their ways to different international platforms, but also maybe to UN bodies, maybe also to directly fund maybe trusted organizations within the structures, because grassroots movements often also lack, unfortunately, structures. But
that is true.
Luckily, in Sov Lanatir, we have like a legal team working a lot on the structures to be able to bridge the gap between the community and the high-level stakeholders, funding
How
bodies.
many members are you in the Sov?
Right now we are around 15 executive members, then there is 20 junior members, and then around 500 members and volunteers.
Okay,
Around
that's
the
not
island.
bad.
And we've engaged around, ultimately, around 60,000 youths around Mauritius, especially after the oil spill that happened, which
The
was a
Wakashio.
great turning point. But it is essential to
Did that
maybe
create more of an environmental awareness amongst Mauritian youth?
amongst
that-
the youth, it was a great turning point. Yes, it was a great turning point, but also for many environmental NGOs that I know, it was a great turning point on how also powerful civil society can be when properly structured or mobilized. And in terms of collaboration with the youth, I think it is essential to also find maybe NGOs that can be bridges between maybe other NGOs or the community, NGOs that already know how the community functions, but also have a proper structure that can translate from maybe high-level bodies to community, because there is a lot of missing point, this discontinuity between structural administrative work required by entities, funding bodies, and the actual community, the actual problems, which is not really administrative within the community. But there are like youths like us that can bridge those gaps.
Interesting. That's an interesting point of view. Much as I'd like to continue, keep with this conversation, probably we'll have another occasion to do that, but I just want to thank you for this, and I just want you to end with that one message that you would like to leave for the young listeners,
Yes.
for the youth of this country, as well as the policy makers or the decision makers.
Yes.
What would be that? I mean, I've seen that you are in that category of optimists, right?
Maybe.
Of the
I think so.
on the optimist side, which you described earlier.
Yes.
So that's encouraging to see, and that gives you hope, and that gives you the sort of the motivation to continue. So how would you motivate the other youth and to join in, or to back to Mother Nature, and also for the decision makers? What is it? What would be that one message from your side?
Well, to start with, for the youth, my message would be mainly to, however hard life might get, however difficult mentally it can get, because those crises are not just random crises, those are existential crises we're facing, and it can really get hard on our mental health. No matter how hard it gets, one should keep on dreaming if one believes in those dreams. And ultimately, I think the universe will conspire for miracles to happen. Ultimately, you will see things will fall into place. Just keep believing in yourself. And when no one believes in you, that's the moment that you have to believe in yourself so that you can keep going. And then immediately you will see how this propagates, trickles down, and everyone will start believing in you. And even when you falter, when you trip, it's okay to trip, it's okay to commit mistakes. We are young. It's okay to apologize. It's essential to apologize, but to keep going also, to refine ourselves, to keep going, even amidst the trips that we can do. And to the policymakers, it's to really open up to the youth. I know they are doing a lot of effort to open up. There's many platforms now that is available, but also to not just listen to the youth as followers, but really as partly co-leaders to help drafting the policies, because the youth have a lot of energy and we are directly involved in the fields. We directly engage with day-to-day people. We know their day-to-day problems. So how policymaking can truly trickle down to solve day-to-day lives of people. The youth know about this, so listen to the youth so that the policymaking can also come hand in hand with the community problems.
Thank you so much. I hope this message is seen by the policy makers, but at least from UNDP's side, I can assure you that we will actively engage very regularly with the youth. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.